the AWS Workshop and also Solution Architect overview. I'm Dan, and I'm from AWS. Let's see if I can get my presentation going. Okay, so the agenda today, I'll be doing an introduction. I'll be talking about solution architecting and kind of job hunting and my tips there in relation to cloud-based jobs. And then also be covering the benefits of the cloud. And then I'll go into the physical infrastructure of the cloud because I think not too many people are actually familiar with that. And then I'll be doing an overview of some key AWS services as well as my favorite services. And then the later half of the presentation will just be me going into my account and spinning up whatever I want as a demo. If anyone wants a specific service covered, just shout it out and I'll see if I can get to it and spin something up. But otherwise, I'll be covering EC2, Athena and Glue, and then Elastic Beanstalk. So, all right. So, like I said, I'm a solutions architect. I'm part of the worldwide commercial sector in AWS, and my team is the strategic accounts team. So we work with all the big giant companies that use and run on AWS, as well as some of our longtime customers. So we're talking companies like Netflix, Adobe, Capital One, big stakeholders in AWS. And a little bit about me. I'm from the University of Washington. I graduated with a bachelor's in computer science. Fun fact, I did not go to high school at all. I didn't get a high school degree. I just went to a special program where they just plopped me in college as a regular college student. So I'm 19 now, working as a full-time solutions architect, and it's nice. So I threw around the word solution architect a couple times. What is a solutions architect? Well, a solutions architect is mostly seen as a senior role, but now that's kind of changing. Before, you had to start as a senior developer and then either move into consulting or stay as a senior dev and just be really good for like 10 years, and then you get promoted to solutions architect. So you can think of it as mostly as a consulting position. So we don't code as much as a developer, but we still need to know how to code. And you can see here, this is actually my super duper big boss diagramming a solution. So we at AWS, specifically for our solutions architect role, we have some customers that want to say they want to make some sort of highly available app, and they want to make sure that it has no downtime. So then it'd be my job and to say, okay, you can use these services in conjunction with your code. I have to know what frameworks they're coding with, what language, and know all the technical details, as well as know the AWS services in order to create a really nice architecture that's secure and durable. And so we do a lot of diagramming. Solutions architect works with both the business side and the technical side. We're not as much of a translator as just someone who works with both. The business people often have their requirements. The technical people also have their own requirements, especially in terms of security, and we have to address both. So cost, security, and then just infrastructure in general. And yeah, so being a solutions architect is a very, very different role than being just a straight up dev. But I think it's one that I want to share with you all when you're applying for jobs, that this is a role that you can actually apply for, especially at AWS. Maybe not the senior ones, because there are solution architects where you just work for a company and you make solutions for that company. You belong to that company. For me, I belong to AWS and I give solutions to other people. So who have I worked with? So I started my journey as a solutions architect at the University of California, actually. So here in California with Ty, your club president. And I was the enterprise architect. So I wasn't a solutions architect, but it's more or less the same thing. I was an enterprise architect intern And me and my mentor actually were the ones who pushed the University of California to move to the cloud and AWS specifically. So that's where I started learning about how cool AWS was. So to put this in perspective, all your student data, I know you're at San Jose or wherever, all your student data is actually stored on premises at Berkeley, or used to be, okay, and in the basement of Berkeley. And every 3 to 5 years, they would have to replace all of that infrastructure because they needed to patch it, and the hardware just went old. And it cost $15 million each time they did that. And again, they're doing this constantly. And in addition to that, they were stuck with a Oracle license, which is like really old technology. And so you have these updated hardware, but it's running old, an old database engine, and it was terrible. So part of my job as an intern was actually creating the pipeline to transfer all that data into the AWS and also perform analytics on it. So now if a meteor hits Berkeley, none of your student records will go away, and you can thank me for that. I then went on to intern at AWS at the Academic Medical Center team. I worked with hospitals, staying HIPAA compliant, and did a bunch of machine learning with skin cancer and stuff. So that was really cool. And then after my internship, I got a return offer with AWS. And I am working at, well, I was working like a couple weeks ago at Twitch. Believe it or not, Amazon-owned services run off of AWS, and Twitch needs its own solutions architects. So I was working internally there, working with the new emotes and supporting the infrastructure for everything. So if you knew like the whole PogChamp stuff, I did a little bit of architecting with that. And then finally, I have been moved over to Adobe on the strategic accounts team. And I am like one of 3 people who work with Adobe. So that's really cool. I have a lot of power there. And so if you use Photoshop and draw on stuff and save stuff to the cloud, I'm the one working on that. Okay, so if you think that's cool and you don't want to sit at a desk and code all day and you have some people skills, then I highly recommend becoming a solutions architect. And you can do that by applying at AWS for the Tech U positions. Azure, Microsoft Azure, is basically the same thing as AWS. So everything I'm saying here also applies to Azure if you're into that. And they also have their own chain of solutions architects. But I think Amazon is growing super fast. And if you can't find a job as a developer, definitely apply to become a solutions architect, because we are hiring like crazy. And to be honest, we get paid the same as a developer at Amazon. So I'm not going to tell you exactly how much, but on Glassdoor, that's like $160K a year. And it's like actually probably easier to become a solutions architect at AWS than get a developing job somewhere else, and you get paid more. So, and under non-COVID conditions, normally you'd be traveling like maybe 20 to 30% of the time. So if you're into that as well. So we'll talk about a little bit about the certifications. The cloud practitioner is pretty easy to get. You can just study for that. You can actually study for everything in this on the blue and the cloud practitioner just by reading the documentation at AWS. It's really good. Just find out what, and I highly, highly recommend, if you're on the job hunt, getting certified. And even as a developer, because all these companies that you're applying for internships for, they run their infrastructure on the cloud, probably AWS. And so having these certifications will help you get that competitive edge. We'll go over that more in detail later, but if you're looking to become a solutions architect, I recommend getting the solutions architect associate. If you just want to be a developer, get the developer associate. And again, there's similar ones for Azure and Google Compute Cloud as well. If you're into machine learning and big data, I remember I got a Google certification and I got offered a job at a research company. So do your research on what cloud people use. Azure and AWS are interchangeable, but Google is more specialized towards big data. Okay. Moving on. So before I move on to intro to the AWS, does anyone have any questions about solutions architects or AWS jobs in general?
I cut off for a while. Did you say anything about what you need to become a solutions architect?
Yeah, so if you're going like the traditional route, quote unquote, you have to be a dev, but obviously you're not here for that. So as far as I know, AWS is probably one of the only companies that's offering internships for solution architects. So you'll have to apply there, but it's pretty like, it seems very scary and competitive because it's Amazon, but it's not. And you can have any sort of background. I've seen people with like English majors get in. So, and it's pretty easy and the pay is really good. But yeah, I would get a certification, at least the cloud practitioner, and just apply to Amazon. It's called TechU. Just search up TechU under the AWS jobs, and you should find a ton of different job listings. So that's how you would kind of get your in to becoming a solutions architect, or you can apply directly for solutions architect at AWS. And then I think Azure has a similar program, but they're not growing as fast. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Anybody else? All right. If not, I'll move on. But if you have any more questions, or if you are actually applying to AWS, I got in for both developer and solution architect. I wound up going for solution architect, so just ask away. So let's talk about some of the companies that are building on AWS. There's a ton. I mentioned Netflix, but Nintendo is a big one. Actually, Nintendo is really big on having their AWS certifications. So I remember I got a data analyst acceptance offer from Nintendo, and I had AWS certifications then. And I know a bunch of other people who got into Nintendo and had AWS certifications. And like, I think actually I don't know a single person who got a job at Nintendo without a AWS. So that's very important for certain companies that run their infrastructure. Salesforce, of course, is a big one. Cloud, you don't need it, but it's going to give you a competitive edge. So why are these companies moving to AWS? It's for many reasons, but mostly they're businesses, so they want to save money. As I mentioned in my Berkeley example, where they were spending $15 million replacing everything, AWS takes care of patching and replacing all the hardware. So you only have to pay for the time that you use it, and it ends up being so much cheaper than buying the licenses, paying IBM to go bring in and set up their data, all the hardware in your thing, paying Oracle for a continuing license for outdated technology. It's the cloud just makes it really easy. Plus, the cloud is very secure. Here at AWS, we do multiple audits every year, and our physical data centers are very well protected. In addition to that, of course, we offer tons of services that are very easily integrated once you start getting your infrastructure on the cloud. So that includes databases and our own proprietary databases, and then digital transformation, so ETL, and machine learning, and we also offer IoT device connection very easily. So tons of different business reasons, and this is why like they don't teach you about the cloud in college, but you should definitely learn it. And I guarantee you, when you're going to be coding backend, you're going to need to eventually run into the cloud and learn it. So why not start now? And just like a quick overall cost savings, you can see that when they moved to AWS, they saved 19% and 27%. And then as they stay on the platform and continue to build applications, they save 42.4% in overall spend per user. So it's pretty amazing how much money we can save. And again, security is very important. If any of you are going into security, I highly recommend picking up the Cisco security certification. And that in combination with the cloud would probably get you a job, like no joke. And also continue doing leak code. Don't just, stay a good programmer, but also have this outside industry knowledge so that you can apply it when you're on the job. So kind of the important takeaway to take here is that AWS has a lot of different services that help make security easier, makes it easier for you to do your audits and view your logs, but also we are highly compliant with several security standards, and also we're very tight on security in terms of who can access what resources. So it makes it very easy to stay secure on the cloud. And here's just some examples of companies that use AWS for sensitive workloads. And in addition, several companies on Wall Street use AWS. We actually built physical data centers in Wall Street just so that they can have low latency trading. And we, of course, do Capital One. And so here are some of the compliance controls that we cover, the most important ones being HIPAA, if you ever work in the government and have to deal with patient data, and then also PCI DSS. So PCI DSS being the security compliance that all companies need to meet if they are doing transactional-based workloads. And then again, we are certified for all sorts of different countries. So you inherit all of that when you move to the cloud. So here's a very common interview question that you're going to come into when you work on the cloud, and that's going to be the shared responsibility model. So you need to know this. AWS and the customer both share responsibility for security on the cloud. What AWS is responsible for is the actual physical infrastructure. So we make sure our data centers are heavily guarded. We make sure that no one can tamper with the physical stuff. And also we make sure that our services that we run and provide to you are also secure in and of themselves. Now, customers, of course, will have to be responsible for any of the applications that they write and host in the cloud. So their actual code and also the way that they use our services. So sometimes they can link our services to their things in a kind of insecure way, and that would be their responsibility. So I think it's pretty straightforward, but it trips up some people sometimes, and they're definitely going to ask you about this. So make sure you just know about how the cloud security works. And this works for Azure as well. So let's talk a little bit about the AWS global infrastructure. So this is what the cloud actually is. Obviously, you guys are computer science knowledge, so hopefully I don't have to explain to you that the cloud lives actually on AWS-owned infrastructure. So we have regions, and regions are just going to be these big groups of data centers. We have regions all across the globe, and of course, if you're going to be coding something and you're getting traffic from, say, America, the American ones are going to be able to pick it up faster. So regions are very, very important, but they're more of a category more than anything. Different services will actually sometimes have different versions in different regions, and also the pricing will vary per region. So watch out for that. And inside each region is going to be some availability zones. So availability zones are collections of data centers. They are not a single data center, they are collections. And each region has on average 3, but at least 2. And so here's why it's important. So within an availability zone, when you have something hosted on that availability zone, it gets put into and replicated in the data centers. Now, these data centers are pretty close to each other so that they have, they can talk to each other really fast. But if one of your resources fails in that data center, it will fail over automatically to the other one. And then, say, a meteor hits one of the availability zones. So the availability zones are close enough so that they can communicate really fast, but far enough so that any disaster that falls upon one availability zone will not affect the others. And so if a meteor hits one, then if you had a copy in another availability zone, then that will be spun up instead. And so certain services will do this automatically. Sometimes you have to configure it because obviously duplicating your resources will cost more. Fun fact, Berkeley, as I'm going to bring back that example, they didn't just only have that data center inside Berkeley, they had to duplicate it and put it in the mountains. And actually, this is very archaic practice that companies not on the cloud do, is that like sometimes if they want to retrieve backups, they have to call this dude, and the dude's going to take a truck and like drive all the way to the mountain, and then it's going to take like a couple days to transfer the large, backup data over to whatever physical device, and then he has to drive back to the company. So, like no joke, this is an actual thing, and this is a thing that companies have to deal with. So the cloud makes it very easy to handle data replication and make sure that your apps are running like 24/7, even during the patching that we do and the upgrades that we do. So with that's kind of the overview of the basics of AWS and what the cloud is. Does anyone have any questions before I move on and talk about the key services? All right, I'll take that as a no. So again, AWS has some very powerful services and so many key ones that it's kind of impossible for me to talk about everything, but I'll talk about some of them. So Amazon EC2. You guys probably run into this before. Maybe during one of your assignments you had to use it. But if not, I'll be demoing it really quick. And essentially, it's just a server that you spin up, and you can come in and do whatever. If you probably have your university thing that you SSH into, and you can think of the EC2 as basically just a virtual computer that you can specify and spin up. Down at the bottom right, there's the S3, Amazon Simple Storage Service, and that's just an object-based storage that you can store items and whatever you want in it. And so that's our kind of biggest just raw data storage kind of thing that we have. And you've probably downloaded resources from S3 for your assignments as well. So something that not a lot of people know about is AWS Lambda. This is starting to be more widely used. It falls under this thing called serverless architecture. I highly recommend that you go look up serverless architecture. Obviously, everything has to run on a server. But what makes this quote unquote serverless is that you do not have to specify how many resources to get for whatever snippet of code that you're running on AWS Lambda. All you do is you just put code, and you can run it as many times as you want on the Lambda. You can have multiple Lambdas running at the same time, so it makes it parallel. And it's super cheap. It's like less than a cent to like run it for a couple minutes. So, and also like AWS will handle the provisioning and stuff on the back end. So you do not have to worry about having a server at all. And that's what makes AWS Lambda very powerful. So a lot of RESTful APIs run on AWS Lambda and not EC2. So in the blue icons here, we have our different data and database solutions. So our most common one is Amazon RDS, which is the relational database service. If you've ever used MySQL, Oracle, this supports those engines. It's basically like, you could have an EC2 and host your database on the EC2, but it's going to be cheaper to do it on RDS because we optimize it for databases. So that's just why that's there. We also have our own engines that we wrote. We have the Amazon DynamoDB, which is used for transactional-based workloads. So a lot of like purchasing and online shopping, as well as video games where they need to do a lot of reads and then maybe a lot of writes. So this does it at a very low latency and really fast. And also offers, of course, that data replication that I talked about. We also have Amazon Aurora, which is a PostgreSQL database, and it's basically a replacement for MySQL. It does things really fast, and it's cheaper and more secure. And then we also have Amazon Redshift. So as I was saying earlier, before this presentation started, Redshift is our data warehouse solution. So if you're into data analysis, you'll be working with these things called data lakes. It's not necessarily a data structure, but it's simply a collection of just random data that you have. And if you're having store in your data lake on AWS, you'll be storing it in the S3 bucket, and it can just be a mixture of unrelated data of any type. And then what Amazon Redshift will do is make it easy for you to transform the data, query the data, perform machine learning on the data, and it does all that super fast. And it deals with petabytes of data at once, okay? Petabytes. So if you don't know how much a petabyte is, like it's many, 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 many terabytes. So these big businesses are dealing with tons of data. And then not necessarily a core service, but a service that is gaining in a lot of traction in my personal favorite and my specialty is Amazon SageMaker. So Amazon SageMaker, if any of you have done machine learning, it basically is just Jupyter notebooks for dummies. We have built-in models that you can run, and when you use it in combination with Amazon's ETL, so extract, transform, and load services that allow you to take data and transform the schema, you can make it very, very easy to perform machine learning on whatever you want. So like if you've ever done machine learning and you've coded machine learning models, you'll probably know how difficult it is to actually take a data set and fit it into a model. So because the model will have matrices with certain data points, and so you need to transform your training data to fit that matrix. And so with Amazon, you can essentially set up a pipeline that will do that automatically without you thinking about it. So then there's AWS CloudFormation, which I highly recommend you guys check out when you're learning and digging more about AWS, because obviously I can't cover these. So please, please do look it up. Our FAQs are really powerful and well documented. And most of the time they will have a CloudFormation stack. So if you click on that and just click launch, it will spin up all the resources that you need and you can go around and look at that. Also very important to understand if you're going to be working in the industry is the Amazon VPC. This is a virtual private cloud and essentially is a firewall for all your business stuff. So you're going to have all your EC2 instances and your infrastructure inside of VPC so that when it's on the cloud, other people, if they try to attack it, they can't access your resources. Pretty simple enough. So before I go into the demo, is there like any, now's the time to ask any questions about a service that I have not mentioned that you're interested in, so I can maybe give a deep explanation or elaborate on that. That would be the time.
I'm sorry, what is an SSH?
Oh, SSH is just kind of when you go into remotely from your computer to a server, so you can access it and do what you want on there.
Thank you.
Yep. And I will actually show how you can SSH into a EC2 right now. If nobody else has any questions. So allow me to set this up real quick. Okay. So I am now sharing my screen. So we are in my work account. I have an unlimited amount of money to spend and 30 minutes left in this workshop to show you how to use some of these services. So
actually, sorry, I have one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
You said Lambda, since Lambda serverless, like why would you use EC2 over Lambda?
That's a great question, and that is when, say, you have something that has to be running all the time. So something like a web server, right? So if you need to host your web application, that needs to be taking in and listening to internet traffic at all times. So that would be something that you put on EC2 because Lambda can't really listen for internet traffic. It can listen to certain events. So if you send in an event, but someone trying to access your website is not really a good example of an event. Another time you would want to use EC2 over Lambda is, again, for like databases and stuff. And also Lambda has limitations. You can only run a Lambda function now, I think, for your code has to finish within 15 minutes. So if your code has to run longer than 15 minutes, then that's a no-go. So for example, there's a batch processing type workload, and you need it, and it has like a lot of things it needs to process, and it's going to take longer than 15 minutes, then that's with something you would put through EC2. Otherwise, if you have, but if it can be broken up and parallelized, then that would actually be a good time to use Lambda. So it just depends. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I see. Thanks.
All right, perfect. So I am on the EC2 dashboard of this console. So if you ever go into the AWS console and you type EC2, my work computer is so slow, you'll get the EC2 here. You just click this and you'll end up here. And something I didn't mention about EC2 is one of the amazing features is that you can attach something called an auto-scaling group. And auto-scaling groups and load balancers. So what do these do? So say you have a fleet of servers and you have internet traffic coming in, and one of your servers is kind of taking all the brunt of the traffic. If you have a load balancer, it will equally distribute the traffic so that none of your servers get overworked. And then in addition, if you have a auto-scaling group, if you shut down, or if any of the EC2 instances go offline, it can automatically spin it back up so that you're always at full capacity. And also, based on how much traffic, it can shut down EC2 instances to save you money, and then it can also expand it to handle more incoming traffic. I won't be showing you how to make those today, but when I go into my Elastic Beanstalk demo, you'll be able to see one of those auto-scaling groups in action. So the first thing you want to do when you go into EC2 is you want to go to this key pair. So what a key pair is just for encryption. I might have to log back in. Okay. So it's just a key pair that we use to authenticate that it is indeed who created this, and I want to access it and do stuff on my EC2. So if I create a key pair, I can say this is SCE demo key. And you get two file formats. So if you're going to be SSHing via a Linux console or just through the command line, you will want a PEM file. My favorite way to access other consoles is to use PuTTY, which is just a application you see here on Windows. So this is only for Windows. So make sure you select the correct file format. After that, I will just simply create the key pair. Keep in mind that creating this key pair is only necessary if you want to go in and access your EC2, which you pretty much always want to be able to access it. Excuse me. So, and then, I will just save the file. It has been saved. So let's go ahead and spin up an instance. So this is actually something that you guys can do yourself. It is, we do have a free tier. So what is AWS free tier is that it lets you spin up some resources for free of a certain type. I'm going to abuse my power and spin up something bigger than what you're allowed for free tier. So you get an AMI that you have to choose. This is basically, if you've ever used a VirtualBox and had to select an OS, this is basically the same thing. Machine image, the Amazon machine image, it captures the state of whatever service or EC2 you're using. So if you say you have an EC2 and you have an app, you've built the app and you've run it on there, and you want to say duplicate that state on other EC2s, or you want to use an auto-scaling group, which will need an AMI, you can create one, but we're just going to select the default Amazon Linux one for now. So once you've selected the AMI or /OS, whatever, you now get to choose how much compute power you need. So again, this is free tier micro. It has 1 core and 1 gigabyte of memory. The T family is the general family, so this is just for general workloads. We have several other families. You do not have to memorize this for any of the certifications or for any of your interviews if you ever decide to. Just know that we offer different families and they tackle different things. So one tackles network, other ones, the G series has really powerful GPUs you can use for machine learning, and so on. So we're just going to choose a general large, why not? Or actually medium, so it spins up faster. And you'll see that we have instance storage. So there's 2 types of storage that you can attach to an EC2. The first one being is an elastic block store. This is just a typical regular file system. And when you shut down your EC2 instance, all this data will get deleted. We have another type of storage called an EFS that you can attach to the EC2. You can even attach it to multiple EC2s, and that instance kind of exists outside of the EC2s. So if the EC2 shuts down, your information will still be up. All right, so we'll configure the instance details. So under the network here, you get to select your VPC. So if you are working in a business and you're spinning up something, you will need to do it under your business's network. We're going to keep it as default for now. And then this is an auto-signed public IP. Obviously, every server needs a public IP for things to access it. If it's a backend server that the internet doesn't need access to, you're better off disabling it so that there's no chance someone can contact it. We're going to enable it so that we can SSH into it. And again, you can still keep it private while having a public IP. The rest you don't really need to care about. For the shutdown behavior, you can just terminate it, change it to terminate it, but it's on stop by default. And down here under user data, so like I said, sometimes you don't always need to SSH into it to play around with it. If you have a set of commands that you want it to run, when it spins up, you can just put it here instead, and you won't have to use your key. So next, again, this is the storage. We can even choose what type of SSD we want. Provisioned IOPS is for faster networking, and we can add more if we'd like to. Next would be tags. Sometimes you want to name your thing, so we can go name CE demo EC2, and it will have a name. And then this is the security group. This is what's going to allow internet traffic is basically like a firewall. Here we are only allowing SSH, which is a TCP protocol on port 22, which is all standard. And the source 0000 means anywhere from the internet. If I want it to be super secure, I can just say my IP. And I can review and launch. And that's what I will do. So now once I launch, it will tell me to choose a key pair. So I'm going to choose the one that we created. I click I acknowledge. And it is now launching. So if I go view my instances, it should show up in a minute. And here we go. So it does take a little bit to spin up. And once we do, we can actually, there we go. So we get all of this stuff here, and we can see that it did indeed create a public IP address. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this public IP address. I'm going to put this in the host name where the IP is. It is port 22, so that means I'm going to be SSHing in. And if you were going to do this from the command line, it would just be SSH. You can look at it. You can look it up. And here I'm going to go under the SSH tab, authentication, so auth, and I will go ahead and choose the PPK file that we were doing. And I'm just going to click open. And now it asks me if I trust it. I click yes, and it's going to say login as. So depending on the AMI, you're going to have a different login, but generally you can't go wrong with EC2-user for the username. There is no password. And look, I am in. So I can now click, I guess there's nothing in the main, so I can say make directory, test directory. And you can see that it has been created. So I can now use this as like my own Linux computer. If any of you play Minecraft, you can host your Minecraft servers on EC2 and host any kind of application that you want in Linux. So that concludes my EC2 demo. Do any of you have any questions? Okay. I'm going to assume that you all know how to make an EC2 and get into it now.
Sorry, I don't know if it's just me, but I think the stream is a little bit fuzzy.
Oh, you know, honestly, I am streaming on my work computer, and it is a piece of shit.
That's totally fine. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I can do anything about the quality. My apologies. Was there anything that like was blurry and was kind of hard to see that you'd like me to re-explain? Or were most of the steps clear enough?
Yeah, I think we get the general idea.
All right, cool. And if you want, I can go ahead and grab some documentation and put them in the workshop for you guys to follow along later if you want to. Okay, so we got 20 minutes, and I will go ahead and show you one of my favorite parts of AWS and something that I worked a lot with during my internship at the University of California. So I'm going to go ahead and create an S3 bucket. So we have S3 here, and creating a bucket is kind of similar to creating a folder. And essentially, we can name it. So when we name it, it does have to be unique among like every bucket created ever. So yeah, SC demo 2021. And so, you know, give it a long name that is descriptive. We can choose to copy settings and whatnot. Public access. So sometimes you want people to be able to download from your bucket, so you can turn that off. But I'm going to keep that on. Bucket versioning. So this is a really cool feature at S3. It means that, so in an object-based store, when you upload a file, it will completely overwrite that file. It's not like a one-line change or whatever. It will completely overwrite this. But if you enable bucket versioning, it will keep track of previous uploads of that object in case, say, you upload some code, because some people do actually store code in S3, and it breaks, say, your production, you can roll back that change with bucket versioning. And we also have things called policies that you can say, like, if I have an old version sitting there, it's because it's a copy of the old version, it's going to cost you money. But you want to keep it around for at least like 2 weeks. But you can say after 2 weeks, send it out to some other cheaper form of storage. We have something called AWS S3 Glacier. That's super cheap, but it just takes a little bit longer to get your old information, or you can just straight up delete it. So that's why S3 is really cool. And you can also enable or disable encryption. So now we create the bucket. And it's gonna take a while. Okay, so we've created our bucket here. It's gonna show up on our list. We got a SCE demo 2021 day and test. And so what we're going to do here for our demo is we're going to upload some form of data that we want to analyze. So typically, you can't run SQL queries on CSV files or Parquet files. I have this sales records CSV file here. You can run SQL queries on JSON files or with NoSQL, I believe. So, but we're going to upload this to the cloud so that we can do cloud stuff to it. And the rest of it is not important. So we just upload our thing. It is uploading. It's fairly small, so it should be quick. S3 is actually, after a recent update, is going to be updated all the time. So when you publish an update to it, the next time that you access it, doesn't matter if it's like right away, it's going to be that new version. So that's very important. Okay. Does anyone else have connection problems? Do I need to slow down?
I'm saying it totally fine.
Okay. All right.
Oh, so wait, one question.
Mhm.
You said it's important that that S3 is updating all the time. Why?
Oh, it's not updating all the time. It just updates at that moment. But say it's good for like synchronization issues. So say like you have some employee data stored in your S3 bucket and someone updates like their photo. That's going to overwrite it. Now in the past, I like 2 months ago, what would happen is the S3 bucket would say, Amazon would say like, look, if you update something, you got to wait a couple seconds for it to sync up. But after some research and stuff, it's now when someone uploads something to it, if you're going to grab it right away, like the instant it's been updated, it will be that new version. So it's just really good, right? It's not so much important. It's really cool and good. But yeah, that was a very old kind of thing that used to happen and was a very, very common interview question. So just keep in mind like those two answers because someone might not be so updated. So you might want to be prepared to answer in that way. So it has been uploaded. And now I'm going to do something, and this is just so magical. I'm in a service called AWS Glue, and Glue is an ETL service. It allows you to, over here, create tables, crawlers, and schemas. And over here, we have the ML transforms, which I was talking about, where if you have data that you want to plug into a machine learning algorithm, but you don't want to do all the math and thinking of like, how do I convert this so that it will fit into the model, you can use ML transform. But we're going to start with a crawler. And what a crawler does is you've heard of web crawlers, like Google uses crawlers to go and parse through websites. So this crawler here is going to go through your data of whatever format, well, not whatever format, but certain formats, and creates a schema similar to a database schema, and then you can then do queries. So we're going to name this SCE demo 1. Hopefully I haven't named something like that. And now we specify the source type. We're going to say it's from a data store. We're going to crawl all the folders inside the S3 bucket. And now we get to choose our S3 bucket. So you can type the S3 here. If there's like an external S3, you can put it in here. If I believe this was the one that I made. So we click on this and it will then parse through. Yeah, let me check. Yep, Dan test. So it's just going to parse through all the CSV files in that path and create a schema. So we're going to click next. No, we don't want to add any other data. And now here comes the IAM role. This is the thing that prevents you from accessing things unless it has permissions. Even the AWS services themselves need to have permission to access other services. This is what makes it secure. So I'm going to do like CE test role. and you can name it whatever. It's just going to automatically give this permissions it needs to access that bucket, but it won't be able to access other buckets. So if someone hacks into your account, they get a hold of your crawler, and say like for some reason they can only control your crawler, it's only going to be accessing that bucket that it has. It won't be able to, they can't make it access other buckets. And you can also make it run on demand. So if you're updating your S3 bucket with other information on an hourly basis and you want the tables to be updated hourly, you can change that. I'm going to keep it on run on demand because I don't want to make my boss angry if I spend too much money on my account. And we can choose a database to add it to. I'm just going to create a database, SE demo 3. And I'm going to add some other options, but it's not really important. You just click create. And now when we go and look at our databases, this will be the name and it'll create a table underneath. And you can also add other options, but I generally don't need to use them unless I'm parsing some weird format. And then I'll click finish and it will create the crawler. So we have our demo crawler here and it's ready. So I'm going to click it. I'm going to click run crawler and we're just going to let it run and create the table. It is now running and still kind of checking our tables. Yep, looks like it finished. If I look at our tables or maybe our databases here, yep, we'll see that SEE demo 3 right here got created. And if we click on it, actually, let me look at the tables inside. Did it not finish? Okay, it's starting. I have a backup just in case, but it does take a little bit because it is trying to figure out like what rows are representing and what columns are representing. But while that runs, I will just show you example query. I prepared this just to save time, but it's essentially the same thing. There's a data source, the data catalog, which belongs to Glue. You can include other data sources, and then I have a database. So if I click this, I have a simple query. I'm just going to select all the elements, attributes from demo prep2 dot whatever this is, and I'm going to limit it to 10 results. And if I click run query, it will query all this and it'll show me my region, country, item type. So I've successfully run a SQL query on something that was not built to be queried. And if we look at the CSV file here, sales record, let it open in Excel, this is what it looks like. And so, yeah, you can't query this right off the bat. And the crawler was able to figure out the schema, and in combination with Athena, we can now extract whatever information we need from that CSV. So this was very useful. I use this a lot for converting very old data types from that Berkeley database. So all those old 40-year-old, 50-year-old student records that were digitalized, I was able to convert and upload into S3 in a modernized format so that we could run analysis. So these two are like my most favorite power combo. And again, if you're doing machine learning with SageMaker, Glue is going to be your friend. So we have like 5 more minutes left. I want to open it up for questions, but before that, I just really want to do a super quick AWS Elastic Beanstalk demo. So this Elastic Beanstalk is not really a standalone service. It's basically just a quick start for if you want to have a website and host it, you can do it through Elastic Beanstalk. You just click Get Started. And this will spin up the EC2 that's going to host your web server. This is going to spin up any databases you need that are connected to your web server. And it's going to create those auto-scaling groups, and you don't even need to know a single thing about AWS. I think it's really cool. So I'm just going to name the app. You can add tags, whatever. So here we can choose our platform. It supports, Docker, Go, Java, Node.js, whatever. Tomcat. I'm going to choose Node.js, keep that. You can upload your own code. So depending on what platform you choose, you might need to name your application a certain thing, but it will run right off the bat, which is so cool. And I will click sample application. So they already have some sample code, and I'm just going to click create application. Oh, I messed up. I messed up. I should have selected more configuration options. We'll go in and show it, but I won't see it to the end so that way I have time. But if I go down here and I say, let's pick Node.js, configure more options. You have some configuration presets. So if you need it to be free, you can put it under single instance. So you can try this out for free. I'm rich, or virtually rich, since I work for AWS. I'm going to click on high availability, and this is going to give me load balancers, which I said would distribute the traffic. It's going to give me the auto balancing. So if I click on the EC2, or if for whatever reason it fails, it's going to load up a new one to replace it. So with that is pretty much my presentation. Are there any final questions? Please feel free to ask away if you have anything about AWS.
All right. So I have a quick question. So I don't have much experience with AWS. What's the best way you suggest to study? Like get all certification?
That's a great question. Yeah, so for the certifications, AWS, so if you go to AWS like Cloud Practitioner, so for the certifications, obviously it's, you might want to spend a little money. There's a really, really good website called A Cloud Guru. And A Cloud Guru is actually amazing. They have online courses for cloud certification. It does cost a little bit, but I find the instructions really good and totally worth it. But if you don't want to spend money, I actually did not spend any money and got my associate certification just by going to AWS. And like, if you click on products and you just select like a product and go to EC2, there's just so much documentation on here where you can click get started. They'll have quick starts. They'll have all those tutorials, kind of like what I did. And if you click on FAQs, they'll pretty much tell you like what it is, what you can do, everything on this page for the services. That's all they're going to test you on the certifications for up to associate. And really, you don't even need associates. I would highly just recommend just getting the Cloud Practitioner, and that's actually super easy to get. And you just get that by reading this and just understanding what it does and the options that you get. And if you click on getting started, it will show you. There's also, if you're just interested in AWS in general and what AWS has done for other companies, because I think it's really cool, you can just search up AWS blog, and you can just see like people writing about blogs. I think if you go like into, you can choose what type of thing you want. So if you're really into like, I wonder what they're doing with machine learning. So I'm just going to click on machine learning, and you can see how people used which service to do what. And you'll even see these architectures here. And that is stuff that solution architects like me build and write. So, and again, you have the official page where it tells you the format, it tells you that, and you can get an exam guide. It will tell you what will show up on the exam. And that's how I would study. Just sit down and just read and consume about AWS. And I know it's kind of difficult to try it out because there's not a lot of free things. But like I said, EC2 free tier is free. And even though you're like, oh, they're going to give me a weak instance, that instance can still run stuff. I know Ty runs his Discord bots on those free tier AWS. So yeah, and if you like ever need help finding something, just message me. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone else have any other final questions? All right, I guess not. Thank you so much for coming and listening in. I really appreciate it. I will accept your friend request after this. This is actually my work account that I don't use often, so I will go ahead and type in my personal account actually, and go send your friend request there. I have a personal account for voice acting, so that's where you can reach me, and I'll be watching. But yeah. All right.
All right. Thank you, Dan, for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. I hope you guys learned a lot and got more excited about learning about AWS. Pretty much, you're gonna eventually work at a company that's running on the cloud, so it's just gonna be a huge advantage to you to know and be familiar with the services. You don't have to know how to use them, but just knowing them will give you a big edge. So yeah. And if you need me to review your resumes or apply to TechU and you want me to review over that, I can do that as well. I can't give recommendations because obviously I don't know you guys personally. But yeah. Have a great rest of your weekend.
All right, bye.
Or week. Thank you.